You step out of a crowded tavern after sunset, still carrying the noise of voices behind you. The door closes. Ahead, the street has vanished. There are no glowing intersections to guide you, no bright windows marking the way, no visible house numbers nailed above the doors. The road is only a narrow strip of uneven stone beneath your feet. A puddle becomes a hole. A low wall appears only when your shoulder strikes it. You know the route home, but knowing it is not the same as seeing it. At the next corner the familiar lane divides into two black passages. One may lead toward your room. The other may end at a ditch, a locked gate, or someone waiting in the dark. Behind you the tavern is already swallowed by shadow. Ahead lies the last turn home, and everything that might be standing beside it. So how did anyone get home? Lucius chooses the passage on the left because he remembers a baker's shop at the far end. He raises his little oil lamp, shielding the flame with one hand, and steps into the alley. The light reaches only a few feet. It catches a broken paving stone, the wet flank of a mule, then vanishes against walls rising on both sides. Above him, balconies lean across the narrow gap, blocking the stars. Water drips from somewhere overhead. A shutter bangs. Lucius stops, listening. There are footsteps behind him. He turns. The alley is empty, but his lamp has begun to gutter. The wick sinks into a pool of oil, flares once, and leaves him with a dull red glow. He shakes the vessel, but there is not enough oil to carry him far. A lantern-bearer could walk ahead with a bright lamp and a staff. Lucius had seen such men outside expensive dinner parties hired by senators and wealthy merchants. Tonight he had no servant, and the one lantern-bearer near the tavern had already taken another customer. So he keeps moving. His sandal strikes a mound of refuse. He catches himself against a wall and feels something warm crawl over his fingers. From a doorway, a dog growls. Lucius pulls his hand back and hurries on, trying to remember the turns by sound rather than sight. Then he hears singing. A crowded tavern spills light through its open doorway, and for a moment the alley becomes visible, the painted wine jars, the benches, the faces tilted toward one another. Lucius steps inside, not to drink, but to borrow the room as a landmark. The tavern keeper recognizes him and points with a greasy thumb toward the street leading north. "Stay with the voices," the man says, "not the quiet lanes." Outside, Lucius follows the noise of carts and late customers until it thins near the public fountain. Two watchmen stand there with spears, their silhouettes cutting across the faint glow from a shrine lamp. He asks which road reaches the hill where his apartment building stands. One guard laughs at the question, then gives him directions after Lucius offers a coin. The safer route adds 20 minutes. It also keeps him beside other people. He walks beneath shuttered windows, past sleeping workshops, and courtyards sealed for the night. Twice, figures move away when the watchmen appear behind him. Once, a hand reaches from a doorway and snatches at his cloak. Lucius tears free and runs until his chest burns. At last he sees the outline of his own insula. His lamp is dead. A neighbor calls his name from an upper window, and Lucius answers before the darkness can swallow the sound. That small exchange at the window was more than a lucky rescue. It was part of how the city worked after dark. Ancient Rome had no permanent network of lamps burning along its streets. No hidden line of illumination waited around the next corner. No public glow marked the safest route home. After sunset, the city was largely black. The same was true in most pre-modern cities. A traveler carried a lantern, a candle, or a torch. Those who could afford it hired someone to walk ahead with a light. Wealthy households sent servants to meet them, while watchmen guarded certain gates, bridges, and public buildings. Everyone else relied on memory. The bakery wall, the fountain, the turn beneath a familiar balcony. A dark street was not an empty street. It was navigated by voices, footsteps, locked doors, and fragments of borrowed light. If your lamp failed, your choices narrowed fast. Find a known doorway, join a safer group, or stop moving until morning. The first solution was simple: carry the day with you. In the Roman world, that usually meant a small clay oil lamp, its wick floating in olive oil or another rendered fuel. The lamp could fit in one hand, but its flame was no bigger than a thumb. It lit the next few feet of road, not the road itself. A traveler saw a patch of paving, the edge of a wall, perhaps the shoes of the person walking ahead. Beyond that circle, the street disappeared. Every step carried the risk of a broken drain cover, a rut left by a cart, or a doorway opening suddenly into the path. The lamp demanded attention. A wick trimmed, too long smoked and guttered. Oil sloshed as the carrier walked. One gust could flatten the flame. Rain could turn an uncovered lamp into a cup of cold fuel. Even under shelter, the flame threw shadows across walls and faces, making a familiar corner look wrong. That was why a wealthy traveler did not always carry his own light. He might send a servant ahead with a lamp, a lantern, or a resinous torch. The servant held the flame above the stones, shielded it with one hand, and watched for puddles and steps. The traveler followed behind, placing his feet where the light had already tested the ground. Torches burned brighter, especially when made from pitch, pine knots, or cloth soaked in resin. They could be seen from farther away. A line of torchbearers announced a funeral, a military procession, or the arrival of an important guest. But that visibility came at a cost. Torches spat sparks, shed smoke, and burned quickly. Their fuel had to be prepared, stored, and replaced. A carrier might need a second torch ready before the first collapsed into a smoking stick. Candles offered a cleaner, more portable alternative. Though good beeswax was expensive, tallow candles were cheaper, but they smelled, softened, and burned unevenly. A candle in a metal or wooden lantern could survive a little wind. Later, panes of glass, mica, or thin sheets of horn helped protect the flame while allowing light to escape. The lantern became tougher. Its glow did not become much larger. There was no invisible wash of brightness spreading across the street. A lantern illuminated the hand holding it, the face beside it, and a narrow strip of ground below. The darkness began again only a few paces away, and the flame solved only half the problem. It showed a broken stone, but it also showed a traveler carrying something worth taking. A thief could see the light before the traveler saw the thief. Fuel prices shaped who could move. Olive oil was valuable in many places and seasons. Wax belonged in religious buildings, wealthy households, and official ceremonies before it belonged in the hand of an ordinary pedestrian. Tallow was cheaper, but a poor quality candle could drown its own wick in melted fat. Someone had to buy the fuel, clean the lamp, cut the wick, refill the reservoir, and carry a spare. At night, light was often a small team effort. One person held the lamp. Another lifted a cloak around it when the wind rose. Someone else might carry fresh oil, a taper, or a replacement torch. If the flame died in the middle of an unfamiliar lane, the group stopped. A hand searched for flint, tinder, or a sheltered doorway, while the darkness closed around them. The city itself supplied scattered points of brightness. A tavern doorway glowed whenever customers entered. A workshop might keep a lamp burning beside its tools. A shrine flickered before an image of a god or saint. At a gate, guards maintained lamps so they could inspect faces, carts, and passes. Busy crossroads gathered several kinds of light at once: shop lamps, cooking fires, torches, and people waiting for companions. These places became nighttime landmarks. The glow from a tavern told a traveler he was near the market. A shrine lamp marked a bend in the road. A gate promised walls, guards, and perhaps directions. But the route between those points was not lit. The traveler moved through darkness, carrying a fragile flame that wind, rain, smoke, or distance could erase at any moment. That fragility was not shared equally. A wealthy Roman leaving a banquet did not simply step into the street and hope for the best. He might climb into a litter, its poles lifted by enslaved bearers, while another servant walked ahead with a torch. More attendants followed behind, carrying messages, clothing, or a second light. The group announced itself before it arrived. Anyone watching could see that this was not an isolated traveler, and that an attack might bring swift retaliation from a powerful household. For the urban elite, darkness could be managed. A senator's client might guide him through familiar lanes. A merchant could send a slave to meet him at the baths or the forum. A woman from a wealthy household might travel inside a covered litter, surrounded by servants, and escorted to the entrance of another respectable home. Her safety depended not only on the vehicle, but on the people attached to it: bearers, guards, witnesses, and the reputation of the family she represented. The poor had none of that protection. A laborer finishing late at a bakery, workshop, or dock faced a different calculation. Could he afford a lamp? Could he spare the oil? If he carried one, was its flame strong enough to reveal a broken paving stone without also advertising his presence to a thief? A small clay lamp gave light for a few steps. Beyond its trembling circle, the street remained unknown. So people waited. They lingered near a tavern until several neighbors were ready to leave. They followed a cart whose driver knew the turns. They kept close to shops that stayed open late, joining the stream of customers instead of crossing an empty lane alone. A woman might delay her journey until a brother, husband, employer, or group of acquaintances could accompany her. Waiting was not wasted time. It was a form of protection in a city where one person could vanish beyond the edge of a tiny circle of light. Being seen with others might be the safest route home, because the dangers were physical as well as criminal. In Rome, a nighttime walker could stumble into a drainage channel, step off a raised curb, or fall where paving stones had shifted. Animals wandered through alleys. Carts struck pedestrians in narrow streets, and a driver moving through darkness might hear a shout only after the wheels had passed. A hanging lamp could catch on a wooden awning, while sparks landed in dry rubbish. Smoke from cooking, fires, and workshops blurred the few landmarks still visible. Then came the human threats. A purse could be cut in a crowd. A cloak could be pulled from someone's shoulders in a passage so narrow there was nowhere to turn. Harassment was easier when a face could not be identified. A stranger might follow at a distance, vanish behind a corner, then appear again where the road narrowed. Even a loud argument carried a risk. Calling for help might summon neighbors, but it might also announce that no powerful household stood behind the person shouting. Rome did have the vigils, the night watchmen created under Augustus. They patrolled, fought fires, and responded to disorder. But their presence did not turn every street into a guarded corridor. They concentrated on places where authorities, commerce, and fire risk demanded attention. A patrol might pass one block and leave the next in shadow. Someone who knew which streets belonged to tavern keepers, dock workers, gangs, or particular patrons also knew where a stranger would attract notice, and where nobody would. That knowledge shaped the route home. The shortest path was often the worst one. A longer road beside a busy market, a temple precinct, or a guarded gate could be safer than a dark shortcut between apartment blocks. Household status mattered at every turn. A servant carrying a message for a known master might receive directions or protection. Someone without a name, a lamp, or companions could be treated as a trespasser, a target, or simply a problem to be moved along. Night did not close the city equally for everyone. It narrowed the world of the poor first, forcing them to wait, follow, hide, or take risks. For the wealthy, servants and escorts purchased movement after sunset. Freedom of movement had a price, and darkness made the bill impossible to ignore. The first change did not come as a switch being thrown across an entire city. It appeared in patches: a lamp outside a mosque, a flame at a palace gate, a row of lights near a market, a bridge kept visible after sunset. In Constantinople, imperial streets and public buildings could be lit on important nights, especially during ceremonies and religious festivals, but this was not yet a dependable night system. A lamp burned only where someone had supplied oil, trimmed a wick, and decided the place deserved to be seen. In Baghdad under the Abbasids and in other major Islamic cities, lamps gathered around mosques, markets, caravan routes, and busy crossings. The light served worshippers, traders, porters, and officials at once. A crowded bazaar did not vanish when the sun went down. Some stalls continued under oil lamps, while guards and gatekeepers watched the approaches. In Cairo, Damascus, and other large cities, lighting was often tied to charitable endowments, religious institutions, wealthy patrons, or the needs of a particular street. Public brightness grew outward from places that already had money, traffic, or authority. That distinction mattered. A single lamp did not erase darkness. It created a lit island with black streets between it and the next one. Bridges were especially valuable. A bridge connected neighborhoods, markets, and administrative centers, yet it also concentrated travelers in one narrow passage. Lighting it helped a porter cross, but it gave watchmen a place to count everyone moving through. The same flame that guided a porter toward the market made it harder for a thief to disappear inside the crowd. Over time, cities began turning scattered favors into obligations. A household might be ordered to hang a lantern outside its door. Property owners could be charged for oil. A neighborhood might have to maintain lamps along its own lane, while a magistrate appointed men to inspect them. In some places, the duty belonged to particular guilds or religious foundations. In others, officials hired lamplighters, who moved through the streets at dusk with ladders, oil, tinder, and long poles. Their work was repetitive and easy to overlook. Fill the reservoir, raise the wick, light the flame, then return before dawn to extinguish it and report damage. But that routine changed the city because it made darkness measurable. A broken lamp was no longer just bad luck. It could mean a failed tax, a neglected public duty, or evidence that officials had lost control of a street. Records began to distinguish the places that received light from those left outside the schedule. The main square shone. The bridge shone. The road to the palace or church shone. A poor lane behind the market might remain almost entirely black. The city was not lit all at once. It was divided into places where power could see, and places where it still could not. European cities adopted organized lighting after frightening episodes of disorder. In Paris, officials began installing public lanterns in the late 17th century. Residents were ordered to hang lights at windows and doorways. Amsterdam built a large network of oil lamps beside canals, streets, and bridges. London expanded through parish and private arrangements before a more regular public system took hold. At dusk the lamplighter unlocked a storehouse, filled his containers, and carried oil through wet streets. One flame, then the next. His route revealed which streets officials considered worth protecting. A well-maintained district gained more than visibility. It attracted patrols, cleaner crossings, later opening businesses, and a stronger claim on municipal attention. The lamp also changed the clock. A shopkeeper could keep the door open after sunset. A tavern or coffee house could gather customers later. A traveler could cross a square, reach a bridge, or wait for a carriage without vanishing into blackness. But the same pool of light that helped a stranger find the road gave authorities a place to watch him arrive. Police could recognize faces beneath the lamps. Merchants gained customers. Crowds became easier to assemble and easier to monitor. Illumination spread as a chain of selected streets, usually beginning around power, trade, worship, and government. The map of light became a map of who counted. For a while, darkness had done more than hide danger. It had imposed a limit. When the sun disappeared, shops shuttered, and workshops fell quiet. Officials had fewer streets to inspect. Employers had less opportunity to summon labor. A landlord, creditor, or supervisor could not watch every doorway. Families could pull a door shut and become difficult to reach. That boundary could be brutal. A woman returning alone might face robbery or assault. A servant dismissed late might have no safe route home. Yet darkness also closed the city around everyone else. A customer could not simply demand service at midnight. Strangers had fewer reasons to move through neighborhoods where nobody knew them. Then lamps began appearing along selected streets, and that old barrier started to crack. A lit road did not merely show a person where to place a foot. It made movement visible, predictable, and easier to regulate. Watchmen gained fixed points from which to identify faces. Constables could stop people beneath an oil lamp. Businesses discovered that customers might keep spending after ordinary closing hours. In 18th century London, lighting and policing grew together. In Paris, illuminated boulevards helped traffic and commerce continue while patrols watched the crowds. Streets that had once dissolved into darkness now offered fewer places to disappear. Then the change reached the workplace. If a street could be crossed after sunset, a shift could run later. A delivery no longer had to wait for dawn. A theater-goer might return home safely. A messenger could travel. A laborer, however, could now be told to remain on duty because the city was still open. That was the hidden exchange. Light gave one person a safer journey, while giving another person's employer a longer day. The city had not defeated darkness. It had made the night usable, and therefore claimable. Factories could run later. Shops could stay open. Trains could carry workers home, or carry them toward another shift. The glow beneath a lamp helped a woman cross an unfamiliar street, but it also marked that street for patrols, deliveries, advertisements, and profit. Before illumination, sunset imposed a limit that even landlords, magistrates, and employers had to respect. After illumination, that limit weakened. Midnight could be extended, organized, monitored, and sold. A street light does not merely show where to walk. It tells the city that the day is still open, and that you are still available to it. After sunset, a traveler might find the turn toward home by a church tower fading into blackness, or by the cold wall beneath one hand. But that same darkness could hide a ditch, a thief, or the street where one wrong turn became a long, silent detour. Darkness did not only make the city harder to cross. It left parts of the city unwatched, by strangers, by authorities, by anyone who might have stopped you. So when we switch on a street light, we do not simply make the road visible. We make the traveler visible too. The first street lights did more than show people the way home. They turned the journey home into something the city could see.